In this video, you are about to learn something that, if applied with precision, changes how she sees you. Not because of romance, but because she won't be able to ignore it. A woman does not choose the man who loves her the most. She chooses the man who appears grounded, composed, and in control. The one who is comfortable with silence. The one who does not need approval to feel valuable. Love is not just giving. It is a quiet exchange of power. And in that exchange, the person who seems to need the least always holds the advantage. Machiavelli understood this long before modern dating existed. Desire is not born from softness alone. It grows from mystery. It does not expand through constant kindness, but through the perception of strength and self-control. People naturally gravitate toward those who radiate inner stability. And she, even if she never admits it, only feels secure when she senses that the man in front of her could lose her and still remain steady. Still centered, still whole. Most men believe showing affection is enough. They think consistency, sweetness, and constant availability are the path. But those things do not awaken desire. They often awaken comfort, sometimes even sympathy. Desire does not look for shelter, it looks for presence, and presence is created through the balance of confidence and distance. That is why she feels drawn to the man who does not beg, does not plead, and does not try to convince her. Because his presence alone sends a clear signal. I don't need you to choose me to know my worth. And in that moment, the balance shifts. Attraction reverses. Her mind begins to move toward what her emotions cannot easily control. A man who can lose her and still remain calm. This is how attraction truly works. It is not logical. It is instinctive. And instinct always moves toward the one who communicates inner strength. When you understand this, when you apply what you're about to learn, chasing disappears from your life. Because when a man learns to regulate his energy, everything around him responds differently. Do you feel that tension? That is potential trying to wake up inside you. Tell me where you're watching from. Because this is the kind of insight no one teaches, yet it can change how you experience connection forever. Machiavelli studied human behavior with the same precision a strategist studies the field before a conflict. He knew men do not fall because they lack strength. They fall because they misunderstand their own power. And in the quiet struggle of attraction, many modern men are losing without ever realizing why. With greater ease every day, he slowly surrendered to his need to be loved. It was not love that weakened him, but the anxiety of needing to feel chosen. For Machiavelli, this dependence was the sign of a soul that had forgotten how to govern itself. A man who does not control his desire becomes a servant to it. He searches for approval, mistakes affection for validation, and offers his energy as tribute to a force he does not understand. When she looks at him, she does not see an equal partner. She sees someone beneath her. And human nature, driven by instinctive hierarchy, never follows the one who lowers himself. She may show warmth. She may smile. But inside her mind, something switches off. Attraction does not die from boredom. It dies from the loss of respect. And without respect, desire cannot survive. Machiavelli would have said that power is born from the perception of control. In leadership, a ruler must appear steady even when uncertain. In attraction, a man must appear calm even when he desires deeply. Control is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery over it. The fire still burns, but it is contained within stone walls. That restraint is what fascinates. Not the anxious gestures of a man seeking approval, but the quiet strength of a man who could love, yet chooses when to do so. The man without control is constantly searching for signs. Does she care? Is she thinking about me? Why hasn't she replied? Every question reveals dependence. Every attempt to please hands over power. She senses it instantly, without thinking. Instinct responds faster than logic. Desire does not fade because she changes. It fades because he surrendered before he was ever valued. What should have been a balanced exchange becomes emotional pleading. And pleading has never been attractive. Compassion alone does not awaken desire. Constant emotional exposure weakens it. Machiavelli observed the same pattern among leaders. The assistant who tries too hard creates doubt. The ruler who explains himself too much loses authority, and the man who desperately wants to be understood reveals his need. Need always signals weakness. A woman does not choose through logic, she chooses through instinct. An instinct looks for stability, but stability cannot be requested. It must be felt. Only a man who governs himself inspires trust. Control is not suppression. It is inner leadership. Knowing your impulses and deciding what to reveal and what to hold back. The controlled man is not cold. He is selective. He does not give attention freely. He knows every word, every pause carries weight. He speaks slowly, not to impress, but because he is not afraid of silence. For him, silence is not emptiness. It is territory he owns. The weak rush to fill silence. The strong are comfortable inside it. When she stands before such a man, she feels something she cannot name. An energy that does not ask, does not bend, does not try to convince. That mystery awakens her deepest instincts. The mind searches for explanations, the body responds to strength, and strength belongs to the one who needs the least. This is the paradox of attraction. The more you govern your desire, the more you awaken it in the other. The modern man forgot this. He was taught to confuse sensitivity with surrender and empathy with self-erasure. He gives himself before he is valued. He exposes his emotions before trust is earned. He becomes emotionally open to someone who still observes from a distance, and in doing so, he destroys the balance. She feels she owns him before she ever respects him, and what is owned without effort is never valued. Machiavelli would see this as a ruler abandoning his throne before being crowned, because in attraction, authority is not gained through insistence, but through presence. A man who knows himself does not chase. He understands that desire grows from recognition, not pursuit. If she pulls away, he observes. If she tests control, he remains composed. Not because he is detached, but because he understands that the first to react loses position. And in that position lies attraction. Not manipulation of others, but mastery of self. He who governs his energy shapes his environment. And the one who shapes his environment inspires desire. She will not choose him for promises or words, but for the steady calm he carries. The calm of a man who can care without losing himself. If men understood this, they would stop chasing and start attracting. They would stop asking for attention and begin earning respect. Because respect is the foundation of lasting desire. Temporary attraction burns fast. Lasting desire is built slowly through inner strength. Power is never gained by asking. It is built quietly. In the mind, in restraint, in how a man breathes when uncertainty appears. Each time he resists reacting, he gains ground. Each time he chooses observation over explanation, his value rises. Each time he holds silence, he becomes difficult to read. And in attraction, mystery is influence. She may not understand it, but she feels it. Something in his calm unsettles her. Something challenges her. And where challenge exists, attraction follows. Control is not an act, it is self-respect. Machiavelli would say that the man who does not govern his emotions will be ruled by them. And in attraction, that means living under someone else's approval. But the man who masters his anxiety becomes the author of his own story. His life no longer revolves around being chosen. It revolves around choosing. That shift changes everything. His eyes no longer search, they observe. His voice no longer asks, it states. His movements no longer persuade, they exist. And in that presence, the dynamic changes. She feels she stands before someone she cannot easily claim. Someone outside the usual patterns. That resistance creates respect, and from respect, real desire is born. She does not want the man who gives himself without limits. She wants the man who sets limits with grace, who can care without disappearing. That man appears only when control becomes natural, not performed. It is not coldness, it is balance, not distance, but courage, not strategy, but awareness. And awareness separates attachment from attraction, the follower from the leader, the boy from the man. When a man reaches this state, he no longer needs to conquer. His presence does the work. Not because he tries, but because he stands grounded. Power is not in what he does, it is in what he no longer needs to do. You feel it too, that calm that appears when you stop chasing and start governing yourself. If this resonated with you, look at your reflection and comment where you're watching from. Because the man who understands this truth is already closer to mastering himself than being mastered. Machiavelli noticed how a woman's gaze subtly shifted the moment a man stopped needing her. It was not obvious, just a slight hesitation, a brief loss of certainty hidden behind small gestures. Before she felt in control, every word from him confirmed it. But when he moved with quiet independence, the balance changed. His inner discipline altered the space around him. Not a trick, a different presence. The energy that once searched became still. The anxiety that once demanded answers turned into silence, and that silence carried weight. She could not explain it, but she thought of him more. Not from need, but curiosity. She wanted to understand what had changed, why he no longer felt predictable. Machiavelli would say uncertainty is the seed of desire. People crave what they cannot fully read and fear losing what they no longer control. And when a man becomes unpredictable, not through games but through self-mastery, instinct responds. It begins to turn toward him. Power does not need performance. A man who knows himself does not react to provocation. He does not explain his silence or justify his choices. She feels that something in his energy has become unreachable. And in the logic of attraction, that becomes magnetism. The feminine mind may resist appearances, but it cannot resist mystery. As he returns to his center, the polarity shifts. What was once pursuit becomes attraction. She begins to adjust to his rhythm, searching for his attention through subtle signals she never used before. And when she does this, it is not affection. It is an attempt to restore balance. Lost power always seeks return, but it cannot return through force, only through recognition. Machiavelli saw this exchange as a silent dance. A man who rules himself does not announce his strength. His calm is sufficient. Every word he speaks carries weight because he is not trying to persuade. Every silence he keeps carries authority. She begins to realize she no longer controls the interaction. Her attempts to provoke emotion fail, and the more they fail, the deeper her curiosity grows. Desire, Machiavelli believed, obeys the man who governs himself. Feminine nature does not seek chaos, it seeks safety wrapped in mystery. And the deepest form of safety is a man who does not collapse when uncertainty appears. Have you felt that calm when you stop needing to be understood? That is the moment life begins to move in your favor. The change was not only external, it was internal order. The man who mastered his emotions now moved as though the world mirrored his balance. Machiavelli believed that at this point the struggle was already decided. He who governs his mind governs perception. The woman who once observed from a distance now felt the pull of his stability. She could not explain it, but her body responded before her thoughts. His voice had changed, not in sound, but in intention. Every word was free of need. He was not trying to impress, he was simply present. And in that absence of pursuit lay the strongest form of attraction. What a man does not try to own becomes valuable because it communicates freedom. Her desire returned, this time shaped by respect. Machiavelli saw in this the same law he described in power structures. Stable authority does not shout or threaten. It simply exists. Anything that must defend itself loudly is already weakening. The man who needs to convince a woman of his worth reveals inner doubt. But the man who stands firm in his own certainty inspires trust. And trust, Machiavelli believed, is the most refined form of control. She began to think of him even when he was absent. His silence became presence. His distance became depth. She searched for emotional traces, signs that he still cared, but he no longer played that game, not because he felt nothing, but because he understood that feeling does not require surrender. Emotion governed becomes magnetism. Emotion spilled becomes weakness. Machiavelli would recognize this reversal instantly. The man who once feared losing her became the one she feared losing. This was not cruelty, it was balance restored. The human mind respects strength. It gives itself only to what it cannot fully possess. That is why when a man regains emotional independence, she moves closer, not farther. Every composed response to provocation built an invisible boundary. Not coldness, but respect. And respect is the purest form of desire. You cannot desire what you do not respect. You cannot respect what begs. At this stage, Machiavelli understood that true influence is not controlling others, but governing oneself. Inner mastery spreads. It changes the atmosphere of every space a man enters. She feels more open, more alive, more aware in his presence. Not because he demands, but because he chooses. And free choice is the most powerful signal of strength. The dynamic shifts permanently. He does not chase. He receives. He does not pursue. He observes. His gaze does not ask. It assesses. His energy does not plead. It radiates. Every movement feels deliberate, like a ruler who does not fear losing authority because he understands authority lives within him. Machiavelli believed this was the highest form of power, self-sufficiency of the soul. And she, who once underestimated him, now tastes uncertainty. She wonders when control slipped away. When she stopped being the chooser and started wanting to be chosen. Her pride resists, but instinct yields. Because desire does not seek equality, it seeks direction. And the man who governs himself sets direction naturally. Machiavelli knew this was the oldest rule. He who conquers himself needs to conquer no one else. That is why control is not a method, it is a transformed nature. A man who reaches it never begs again. And in that dangerous calm, she chooses him once more, without realizing she is no longer the one choosing. You feel it too. That silent inversion where need disappears and power appears. Pause for a moment and observe yourself. That is the beginning of true authority. But Machiavelli also understood the cost. Mastery carries distance. The man who governs himself cannot live as others do. He abandons need, and with it a certain innocence. Absolute control requires sacrifice. To stop depending, one must release what once felt essential. Uncontrolled passion. Blind surrender. The illusion of being fully understood. A man who masters himself stops asking, and in that silence, power is born. But solitude echoes beside it. Machiavelli observed that such men move among others as if from another world. They do not seek approval. They do not panic over affection. That calm separates them. They are respected, sometimes feared, but rarely understood. The woman drawn to his mystery may one day sense a height she cannot reach. She desires him, but hesitates to touch him, fearing disruption. Inner mastery becomes an invisible boundary. The man gains his inner kingdom, but loses part of life's sweetness. He knows bonds can break, so he holds less tightly. He knows desire is unstable, so he trusts himself above all. His serenity may look like coldness, but inside him, fire still burns, sealed beneath stone. Machiavelli saw in this the image of the true ruler, one who governs solitude as carefully as power. Power that cannot endure solitude becomes dependence, and dependence always collapses. Solitude, Machiavelli believed, is not punishment. It is the consequence of clarity. The man who understands the fragility of affection stops building identity through others' eyes. In that detachment, painful yet freeing, he finds himself. Love does not disappear. It transforms. No longer need meeting need, but recognition between two complete beings. Few reach this without loss. Inner mastery demands invisible sacrifices. The calm gaze admired by the world stands on unseen ruins. Every silence hides renunciation. Every controlled movement comes from a wound that learned not to bleed. The woman who once chose him for his calm eventually realizes that his calm is also a boundary. She searches for openings where doors once seemed open. She tries to provoke emotion, mistaking control for a lack of love, without understanding that his emotions never died. They were disciplined. The man did not stop feeling. He learned when to feel. But to those who live through impulse, choice looks like coldness. And from that misunderstanding, a new tension is born. What once attracted her now creates distance. Machiavelli observed that the highest form of balance often causes discomfort in those who have never experienced it. A strong man does not fear loss because he already lost himself once and survived. The woman who walks beside him feels his certainty like a blade with two edges. It protects her, but it also exposes her vulnerability. And the human mind struggles to remain open before the serenity of someone who cannot be shaken. What begins as fascination slowly turns into unease, Unease becomes withdrawal. Yet the man who understands power does not chase understanding. He does not hold tightly to those who cannot live with stillness. He knows that what truly belongs will return not by force or destiny, but by gravity. His contained energy becomes a silent center. It attracts without movement. That is the paradox of mastery. The more you release, the more returns. Machiavelli saw in this the perfection of power. Strength is not possession. It is the ability to lose without collapse. A man who can lose everything and remain whole depends on nothing. Such a man often walks alone. Others mistake his peace for emptiness, but it is fullness, the fullness of someone who has reconciled with his own shadow. At times, he remembers the old fire of desire. He could ignite it again, but he no longer needs to. Power taught him that love is a choice, not a hunger. If he loves again, it will be from abundance, not lack. And that kind of love, Machiavelli believed, is the most unsettling. It does not promise permanence, it offers presence. Do you feel that weight in your chest as you read this? That is not sadness, it is your own strength awakening. Notice it. Recognition is the first step toward mastery. Machiavelli also knew that no power is absolute while desire exists. Self-control may appear solid, yet a single glance, a familiar voice, a memory passing through the mind can disturb the balance. The fire never disappears. It waits. Temptation returns quietly. It does not announce itself. It whispers. It arrives like something known, knocking on a door it remembers. Sometimes it is the same woman. Sometimes only the same energy. Her presence does not disarm him, but it confronts him. Control without challenge is only theory. Machiavelli watched this moment like a strategist observing a general facing a war he does not wish to fight. The impulse arises, the curiosity to test himself. He knows the danger is not desire itself, but mistaking calm for immunity. True strength is not denying desire. It is recognizing it without obeying it, looking at it clearly, and remaining intact. She senses the difference. Instinct always does. She knows the man who runs from fire and the man who watches it without burning. That serenity draws her closer. Not out of cruelty, but instinct. Power must be tested. In every word she speaks lives an echo of the past, an invitation to intensity, but the man has changed. He is no longer ruled by emotion. He studies it. What once overwhelmed him now informs him. Fascination does not weaken him. It teaches him. He separates what the mind wants from what the spirit requires. Machiavelli understood this truth deeply. The most dangerous mastery is not surviving enemies, but surviving memory. The past is the subtlest trap. It disguises nostalgia as love. But the man who knows his power understands that nothing rooted in the past can restore what it once destroyed. So he does not yield. Not from pride, but clarity. He allows temptation to speak, allows emotion to rise, watches it pass without resistance, because to fight would mean it still commands him. Calm resistance proves power needs no demonstration. Have you felt that moment, standing firm before what once controlled you? That is real control. After temptation fades, silence remains, and silence reveals more than struggle ever could. Machiavelli saw this as the true measure of strength. Many defeat desire. Few survive the quiet after it leaves. That silence becomes a mirror. In it, the man sees everything that once owned him. Faces, promises, addictions disguised as affection. He realizes the battle was never against her. It was against his own reflection. Temptation did not come to destroy him. It came to test his awareness. Power without humility becomes arrogance, and arrogance destroys kingdoms. The wise man never blindly trusts his strength. He examines it daily. Temptation returns in many forms, as a face, a thought, a need to feel significant again. She senses she has lost control. Yet part of her is drawn to his resistance. What cannot be possessed becomes idealized. What cannot be conquered burns longer. But he does not reject temptation. His presence dissolves it. Machiavelli believed true power does not destroy desire. It transforms it. The tested man does not hate impulse. He understands it. Every desire carries information. To deny it would be to deny humanity. So he smiles when the past echoes, not with fear, not with longing, with gratitude. He walks forward with the calm of someone who entered hell and found it empty. Nothing buys his attention now. His attention has become sacred. He does not fear love, he no longer seeks it. If it comes, he receives it without kneeling. If it leaves, he does not chase. Power, he learned, is not control over others. It is peace within oneself, even in the presence of desire. Machiavelli would see this as the final lesson. The man no longer needs to prove anything. He knows the highest cost is losing oneself, and he will never pay it again. Do not mistake this quiet for coldness. This is where the soul rests and power becomes wisdom. Once power is understood, it stops being force and becomes clarity. The man realizes his enemy was never desire, nor woman, nor world, but blindness. The belief that power must be proven. Power cannot be proven. It can only be lived silently. He who must demonstrate control does not yet possess it. Only when nothing is demanded does mastery appear. Machiavelli watched this transformation closely. The man who once moved with tension now moved with balance. He no longer spoke of strength. His presence spoke for him. When you meet someone who radiates peace in the middle of chaos, what you feel is not admiration. It is recognition. A memory of your own potential, still dormant. If something inside you reacts before your mind does, understand this. Recognizing the reflection is the first step toward becoming what you already sense you are. The world continues spinning with noise, ambition, desire, and urgency, but this man no longer moves inside that rhythm. Not because he feels superior, but because he understands the pattern beneath the noise. He knows when to act and when to remain silent, when to advance and when to step back. Life becomes a board where every move matters, even the ones that look like loss. Machiavelli believed this was the highest form of intelligence, to move with events without losing direction. Power is no longer measured by conquest, but by the ability to remain steady while everything else moves. A man who reaches this state becomes a signal without trying to be one. When she crosses his path again, what she feels is no longer desire or curiosity. It is gratitude, because his presence, without effort or explanation, showed her what inner mastery looks like. She no longer needs him. Yet she cannot forget him. He leaves behind something invisible but permanent, the memory that love without chains is possible. That strength does not require possession. Machiavelli would have seen this as the final lesson. Power and tenderness are no longer opposites. When balanced, strength becomes gentle, and gentleness becomes powerful. The man who mastered himself did not become cold, he became clear. And clarity does not dominate, it reveals. From that moment forward, everyone who meets him carries something of him. A calm, a gesture, a way of being. This is how true power spreads. Not through commands, but through resonance. It needs no followers, no monuments, because its temple exists inside people. Machiavelli wrote that a prince dies twice, once when his body ends and once when his influence is forgotten. But the man who governs his spirit never truly dies. His influence dissolves into the air. It appears in quiet decisions, in moments when someone chooses restraint over impulse. Each time that choice is made, he lives again. He leaves no speeches, no teachings, only an example. And an example born from inner mastery is stronger than any empire. Those who see it understand something essential. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is no longer being ruled by what you fear. That understanding becomes a seed, and seeds do not need permission to grow. Machiavelli, observing this, knew the story did not end with the man's life. It began with his silence. Because inside the silence of one who has conquered his mind lies the beginning of every real revolution. Do you feel it now? That calm settling in your chest is not the end. It is the inheritance. People listen to him without knowing why. The woman who once felt unsettled by his distance now feels calm beside him. Because true authority does not threaten. It harmonizes. Power, when transformed into wisdom, moves with a different rhythm. It no longer tries to dominate or conquer. It seeks order. The man begins to see the suffering of others without judgment, because he has faced his own. He understands that every person, even the strongest, carries invisible battles. From this awareness emerges a new kind of influence, one that does not manipulate but quietly inspires. Machiavelli would have smiled at this realization. He knew the greatest ruler is not the one who governs through fear, but the one who leads through respect. Fear controls bodies. Respect shapes souls. The man who governs his mind no longer needs to impose himself. He becomes a mirror, and those who see themselves reflected in his calm feel that they too could reach it. Power stops being possession and becomes silent service. The strong man is no longer fed by recognition, but by inner balance. He knows the energy he radiates can change others without intention, like warmth from a fire that does not ask to be noticed. This is the highest form of mastery, when control dissolves into understanding, when power becomes compassion. A man who reaches this point no longer fears solitude. He understands it is not punishment, but space. What once felt like isolation becomes sacred ground, the place where he hears his own voice without interference. Machiavelli saw in this serenity the mark of true greatness. He who needs no witnesses has escaped the tyranny of external approval. When she meets him again, she senses something different. Not desire, not pride, presence. A man who belongs to himself. His energy does not pull, it does not push, it simply exists. And that neutrality creates deeper admiration than attraction ever could. She understands something intuitively. A man who governs his inner world does not need to conquer anyone else. Machiavelli believed this was the hardest power to maintain, the power that does not demand reward. The man could return to the old games. Seduction, control, victory. But he has learned that any victory outside himself is a loss if it costs him peace. So he chooses another kind of greatness. The greatness of leadership without chains. The world tests him differently now. Praise, criticism, noise, but none of it shakes him because his center is silent. When provoked, he answers with calm. When admired, he answers with humility. His power no longer reacts, it radiates, and within that radiance lies a truth few can understand. Absolute control is knowing when not to use it. She watches from a distance and feels something shift. For the first time, she does not want to possess him. She wants to understand him. And that understanding is love, not desire. Love that contemplates, not consumes. The man accepts this without fear. Sharing strength no longer weakens him, it expands him. Machiavelli would say that power at its highest level becomes invisible. It does not announce itself, it does not celebrate itself, it simply exists, like a natural law. The man who embodies it becomes part of the order of the world. His wisdom leaves traces not through lessons, but through how he lives. And in that way of being, love is no longer danger. It becomes harmony. Do you feel that stillness when you realize you no longer need to prove anything? That is the moment power stops being struggle and becomes understanding. If you feel it, acknowledge it. Because recognizing it means stepping into the place where the mind and the soul finally move as one.